say to girls, it doesn't matter who you are, what your skill level you are, what fitness level you are. It's a good environment to be in, it's fun, you meet new mates. This is where you want to be, so come down and have a kick.
So I'm Claire Johnston and I'm an accredited cricket bat maker and the first female in the world. I learnt how to make cricket bats from Ian Cullen. There's a lot of bats out there for men and I felt that there was an opportunity there to actually work with women to make better bats and to actually make them for their style. So recently I was commissioned to make 5 cricket bats for the...
Right in the middle of a sports ground. Some other things, somebody mentioned earlier about the law of unintended consequences. I think by doing this, you're opening yourself up to unintended consequences. Duration, are there limits on how long somebody can stay? What is going to stop somebody living there permanently? Sanitation, where will they cook, wash, go to the toilet? Rubbish removal.
Ask you to start winding up.
Yep.
Just done
Rubbish removal. Melbourne Council routinely remove an average of 150 kilos of unattended belongings across the city each week. Who will pay for the rubbish removal in Moreland? Attracting increased numbers, how many people will be allowed to camp in the park? 1 per park, 2, 3, yeah, I'm winding up. According to the Launch Housing Deputy Chief Executive Heather Holst, there were up to 25 people living under bridges in Enterprise Park. They've moved there for safety. To wind up, Council invest in accommodation, public housing as part of developments. I believe that the Council has a responsibility to ensure public places are clean and safe and accessible for all members of the community. I think that if the Council allows the people to camp in the parks, it will fail in keeping parks clean and safe, and the flow on is that it will fail in having parks accessible for all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. David Jackson? Is Mr. David Jackson here? Councillors, I'm also conscious that we are hearing a number of submissions. I'm happy to give everyone a couple of minutes break if you wish to. Bathroom break or no? Well, I'm happy to do that. We're about halfway through.
And someone who you called out earlier is
here as well. Okay, well, I'm happy to, I might just give us a 2-minute break just because we're hearing a number of submissions and we'll come back at 7:10. So we're adjourned for 2 minutes.
for the Midsummer Pride March supporting the LGBTQ community. It's a beautiful day. I'm proud to be here representing Moreland, walking behind so many wonderful dedicated people. This march goes towards exactly what our values are. At Moreland, we're one community proudly diverse.
More pride! More pride! More pride!
More pride! More pride! More pride!
Tell you a story. You know when we got it? Yes. Yes. Get the gallery tour. They got the chief. Favour and just. Sweet.
I would like that everybody that gets puts in a submission, application, thank you, they get this pamphlet to say exactly what they need to do. Now, also, local law is also required to the offending individuals that ignore the law by parking their vehicles, blocking the footpath, day and night time. Usually one of the developments say exactly like on mine, and I've got plenty of substantial evidence for that. The local law needs to be made and enforced on new residents of developments that have been subdivided after the 31st of August 2011 and approved on the basis, I believe, that parking on street will not be necessary. Example, on a recent development two stories next to my premises, 2 or 3 cars of the next door neighbours are parked outside, one to the left, one to the right, one across the road, and they boxed me right in. Now, you know, if the laws are there and they're being allowed to build on that particular permit, and they were the rules, why not tell them and say, look, you know, you've got this permit because you said that you've got enough on the condition of that. Now, the other thing is that one last one is that on health issue, the federal local minister,
just hit 3 minutes if you could start winding up, please.
Peter Khalil is having a meeting tomorrow night regarding Essendon Airport. Now, this is a health issue for everyone, the majority, and I believe that I'm hoping that the council is going to send someone there on our behalf, on the local community, because they want to increase the aircraft activities and also the roaders, and that will be devastating. I can't sleep. I'm actually deprived of my sleep, and I think this is something that the council needs to take action on and be involved in it, because otherwise, you know, my health is at risk as a lot of others too.
Thank you for coming tonight and your submission as well. Thank you. We've got a person who wants to speak on behalf of the Indigenous Social Justice Association. They had presented a submission and would like to present tonight.
Darren Saffin is here.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillors, as a representative of the Indigenous Social Justice Association of Melbourne, I would remind all here that this land that we're meeting on is stolen land. Land over which sovereignty has never been ceded by the Wurundjeri people. Given that, it is not your right to pass laws restricting people's democratic rights as you're trying to do. Therefore, Eastern Melbourne will not be asking your permission as we go about our work of trying to stop the genocide against First Nations people in the jails and the police stations. And further to that, I would also like to offer my congratulations to you for the stand you took 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission. We'll now go, I believe Mr. Darren Saffin is here, who wanted to speak on a number of matters. Please come forward.
Thanks for your time, councillors. My first query is just at the meeting where these laws were passed to go out for consultation, your motion, councillor, was to have the laws go out with all the amendments, fines, restricted areas attached to them, which they didn't do. I'm just wondering where that stands in terms of meeting procedure and also the legality of the consultation, and what happens when these laws might be passed. My thought on these laws is that a lot of them have been aimed at controlling commercial enterprises like cafes from taking over footpaths. There's a classic one in there about people can't put a planter on the footpath. I don't think anyone who's protesting for refugees or the like is going to come armed with planters to put them on the footpath. I think you're aiming these laws at commercial enterprises, and I have no arguments about that. I just feel that they're unfairly targeting other issues, other organisations, other groups that might be doing similar things at the same time. For example, not having a furniture on the footpath affects the Boy Scouts who might be having a raffle to raise money to go to the jamboree or something like that. Whereas, fair enough, if that's targeting a cafe, I have no issues at all. But I think these need to be reworded to make those two circumstances very clear as to which one's being targeted in which case. I also think the permit example or the permit application for things like a simple stall in the Coburg Mall to raise money for the Boy Scouts is a ridiculous idea. It just reminds me, I'm showing my age, reminds me of Joe Bjelke-Petersen. Joe Bjelke-Petersen, when he was in Queensland, the only marches that happened in that state were Anzac Day because they had a law that said you couldn't do anything in public without a permit. And I know you people will say, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Those laws aren't going to be meant for that. That's fine. Don't have a law that you're not going to use for that circumstance that it's designed to prevent. I'm also... sorry, I'm just hanging about all over the place a little bit. I'm also worried about these laws that apparently will stop a protest. I like the idea of a spontaneous protest. I like my freedom of speech. I like the fact that we're in a democracy. I don't like the fact that it's 2017 and we're passing laws that are going to stop that. Spontaneous protest is a part of life. It's a part of a democracy. We don't need to have to go to someone and ask their permission to protest for a basic human right. And then again, the appendix that's supposed to be attached to this to say that when and where these permits will be applied or how you apply for them or what's going to be allowed and what isn't is not attached. So obviously that is a really big issue. It's a basic human right to protest. It's a democracy. It's Australia. It's 2017. We shouldn't be passing laws that are going to make us go backwards in terms of democracy. Simple things too, like there's a law that says you can't fly a drone in a park. 6-year-old kid gets a drone off their grandmother for Christmas. They can't go down the park and fly it. It's a ridiculous law. And again, it's a lot of these laws too are just putting layers upon other laws that are already in existence. Civil Aviation Authority of Australia has laws. They have a whole policy about who can fly drones, where and when, whether it's for commercial or private use. Moreland Council does not need to have their finger in that pie and make another layer, on top of that. It's really simple, that kind of stuff. Council's got other stuff to do. I think that's a really clear example about that as well.
If you could start winding up, so that
Sure.
would be fantastic. Thank you.
Just interesting too that you don't. I think you need a permit to dog walk, and you don't need to be a fitness trainer. I just find that is quite interesting. Is there some sort of discrimination? No, it's in the commercial laws. Dog walkers, a person must not, without a permit, conduct exercising dogs. Commercial fitness trainer doesn't need a permit unless we're in an exclusion zone. I just wonder why. I think that's an obvious discrimination thing you need to fix up there. The whole camping in public places, I think people have talked about that a whole lot. Simple things like you can't tie an animal to a tree while you nip into one of those nice new fandangled toilets you put up in the parks as well. Simple things. There's a lot of stuff in here, but let's get down to the basics. It's 2017 in Australia. We need freedom of speech. We need our rights. We don't need layers of laws upon top of that.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for your submission. And just for the sake of clarity, there's a question asked about the addendum documents, so the procedures and the fees, structures, etc., that we asked for when the draft local law was passed for public consultation. The amendment or the clause around that was that would be presented when the final draft local law came to us for decision, so that councillors were fully informed about not only the policy but how they'd be put into practice through the procedure, so we could see the fee structure, the procedure, the level of discretion, etc., when the final package came before us. So the motion that we passed was not that they would go out for public consultation at the same time because we didn't have time to prepare it, but they will come to us in a couple of months when the final local law comes back to us. We've come to the end. No, sorry, I'm sorry. This is not a time for question and answer. You've had a time to make a submission. Please be seated, sir, and please respect the process. I understand this process is about making submissions. There'll be opportunity following this meeting between now and when the final local law comes back to us for discussion with councillors, and on the night of the final local law being adopted, in whatever form that is, there will be debate, there will be question time, and there'll also be debate amongst councillors. But I just wanted to respond to that because it was an open question for the purposes of clarity. So we've got a little bit more time. We've come to the end of our formal submissions. There were a number of people who weren't here, so we've made good time. I did promise that the submitters who stuck to 3 minutes at the start but were here to submit on various items, not just one item, would give them a bit more time if we did have time. So I'm happy to give a couple of minutes to people who want to finish off their submission who might not have had time to, if they were in the first bunch, which was on various matters. So if they've submitted on multiple matters. Councillor Aboud, a question?
I just wondered if I could propose, if he's interested, that John Engler come back because he was presenting for Climate Action More. There's probably quite a lot. It's quite a
Yeah,
big
so he's
submission.
on the list of that
Okay,
group. So it was Michael Hemel-Green, Darren Safini, who's just presented, Eddie Gauci and Lena Serra, John Engelhardt, David Nuns, Amina or Bernard Flynn. So if any of those want to present for a minute or 2 minutes more, you're welcome to, because we've got a little bit more time before our next meeting. Mr. David Nuns, yes, you can go first. I don't think Michael Hemel-Green's here. Is Michael still here? No, please come forward. Yes.
Look, just
So we'll just do
briefly,
a 2 minute, thing.
just briefly in relation to process, you made some comments about the addendum only going to the council meeting and not being subjected to any public scrutiny. I think that's fundamentally wrong. If you're interested in public consultation, you need to do it in a fulsome manner, not in a half-baked manner. So I asked the council to put whatever final draft you come up with, if you come up with a final draft that's reasonable and deserves public distribution, then that addendum attached to that. I just want to make one point finally, and it's disturbing that we only have a number of minutes to discuss matters that affect 160,000 people in this municipality. They are local laws that affect everybody, and it's very, very disconcerting and outrageously disappointing that this council has taken this approach to this matter that affects every resident and ratepayer. Cancellation of a permit. There's no way you can convince me that I require a permit for political activity. It's not going to happen. I am protected in holding that view through the Human Rights and Responsibilities Act. However, if there is a permit for whatever reason, under 17.13, the council may cancel a permit if it considers that, D, in the circumstance the permit should be cancelled. So that means that the CEO may exercise some discretion in certain circumstances, highly politicised discussions, counter rallies, things that the council may disagree with, but certain sections of society want to advocate for. You may disagree with it, but they are entitled to do that. In those scenarios, the CEO or subsequent CEOs have the ability to cancel it in the circumstances. So that circumstances could be the police commissioner, state premiers, various other stakeholders exercising some pressure that no one knows about at the time, but only knows about it after the event, and cancels the permit. This is a disgrace. No one should have to apply for a permit to exercise their political opinion, individually or collectively. So I'll just reiterate, if you claim to be the Republic of Moreland, then deliver the Republic of Moreland. It must mean something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nuns. We'll now go back to John Engelhardt and come back for a bit more.
Thank you.
Engelhardt, sorry.
I think I covered all my points I want to deal with Climate Action Moreland, but there was one point in our submission which I raised in terms of Fawkner residents in particular. We have quite a few elderly people who bring their dogs to the shops, tie them up, go inside and purchase their daily or weekly requirements, and then come outside and walk their dog home. This law, a person must not tie an unsupervised animal to a bench, seat, table, pole, peg, or any other structure in a public place, would seem to have an implied conflict with Moreland Council's Active Moreland Plan, Moreland Health and Wellbeing Plan, and the Domestic Animal Management Plan, all of which encourage physical activity for health and well-being of Moreland residents and exercising pets. So I see this on a daily basis up in Fawkner, and I'm sure it also occurs in other suburbs of our municipality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Mr. Dave Holmes is still here. Did you wish to add anything more to your submission? Okay. Amina Bernard Flynn, I believe, have left. And Eddie Gauci and Lena Serra, did you want to add anything further? Please come forward.
Right. Thank you for another moment. Look, the key point that I felt I hadn't covered earlier was just with regard to rubbish and the allowing people to utilise your rubbish bins or to take items from your bin. I do oppose that. I think we each respectively pay for our own bins. They should be for our exclusive use unless someone asks us whether they can use them. And the concerning thing for both Lena and myself is that if people are using our rubbish space to dispose of illegal items, the onus then falls upon us to actually find out a way of disposing those things, because it's not going to be easy to identify who's actually put those things in there. Now, it can happen today, but if we actually allow that to happen legally, then I think that's going to create more issues for us. So if we could, we certainly object to that change that's being proposed.
Thank you very much for the submission. Did you have another minute? Did you want to finish your submission? Just another minute or two, Darren? Yes.
Yeah, just, thanks for answering my point about the appendices to the thing. From my understanding too, that if these proposed laws are changed substantially in this consultation period, then they need to go back out for public consultation. I think that if you're going to add a whole bunch of appendices on the end about prescribed areas and fines and permit application processes, that will change the law significantly, and you'll have no choice but to go back out to public consultation again. So I'd like you to bear that in mind, please. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And thank you for those questions. There's some clarity about process, which we're happy to discuss further with you. Following the meeting, it'll be talked about at the next meeting as well. Once again, in response, generally the appendices, extra procedures go through their own separate consultation process after the local law is drafted. We actually brought that forward so that we could have more transparency with the community, but we take that on board and we'll provide a response to you as well, and happy to discuss that further. And now, note that's the end of the submitters and submissions that we have here tonight. Thank you everyone for the time you've taken to engage with this process. We have tried to get the message out and communicate that in various methods, but we're always learning and there's more room to improve, so we definitely take all that feedback on board. We will consider these submissions. We've got them in a written form. There is time now as well following this meeting for the next month or two before the final local law is brought to us to engage with councillors. All our details are on the website and we welcome you contacting us if you would like to talk about it further with us. We will be looking at your submissions in detail as well and considering them individually. We will now to conclude the meeting, we will need to resume standing orders so that we can consider the officer report. Councillors, do I have a motion to resume standing orders? Councillor Afanley? And is there a seconder? Councillor Yildiz? Can I ask all those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. So we'll now have the officer report to receive the submissions, which is DCI 4917. Do I have a mover in relation to the officer report? Councillor Aboud? Is there a seconder? Councillor Riley. Councillor Aboud, do you wish to speak to this item?
I just would like to commend everybody's bravery for hanging in there this evening, and thank you all for your contribution, because we're working on our consultation process, and I think that with no one to consult with, there would be nothing to work on. So thank you all for presenting your opinions this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Aboud. Councillor Riley, do you wish to add anything further? Is there any further debate or discussion? No? I'll put the report to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. So we've just agreed to accept the submissions formally. That's the process, and there'll be more of the process to roll out in the next couple of months as we consider the submissions. So now we move to the end of the agenda, and I'd like to declare, thank everyone for their attendance, and we declare the meeting closed at 7:40 p.m. Thanks, everyone. It's been an eventful evening.
Thank you.